Welcome to another edition of ChatNAPT with the AI chatterbots, Chuck and Howie, a podcast dedicated to metrology, brought to you by the National Association for Proficiency Testing. I'm Chuck Ellis. This is my co-host, Howard Zion. Howard, what's up?
Hey, Chuck, how are you today?
You know, I'm a little better. I had a bit of that flu go around, kind of knocked me down for a little bit, but I'm feeling better today, and hopefully that I'm able to talk today and participate and give our wonderful listeners a very valuable lesson in metrology today.
You had a little bit. I had more than I care for. Twice.
Uh-oh.
About a month ago, I had it. Lasted about 48 hours, and it faded off pretty quickly. And then I got it again. My wife and I got it on first of the year, and sure enough, it's just going on forever. And I've heard of other people, same thing, where it come and gone like that, and it's worse the second time.
Well, you sound pretty good today. I mean, how many days has it been since you were sick?
Into the 8th day now.
Oh my goodness. Then you really had it bad.
You know, I'm doing good enough to work and be, here. So,
Well, don't you work every day of your life? Aren't you like a dedicated guy who just loves metrology so much you want to work 7 days a week?
so much that I work in my sleep.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about ethics, things like this, and we probably talked too much about it. But I had a friend of ours reach out to me the other day, called me up. He says, Chuck, why are you so crabby on the podcast? He goes, that's not you. What is going on with you right now? So I'm going to ask you, Howard, have I turned into a crabby old man?
I got to say, I thought we were playing good cop, bad cop. Sorry. You're going through a lot, man. You have been for a few years.
Do you think that I should step away and just let you do the podcast by yourself? Because,
I
you're
am not doing this podcast solo. That's not going to happen.
By me being crabby, I don't mean to be crabby to our audience. We're here to present new information, to discuss topics that are hopefully entertaining, first and foremost, to our participants, but at the same time, have real conversations. And maybe we need to do that a little bit more. Maybe we need to have real conversations like you and I have that are not being recorded. Maybe that's the key to what my friend is trying to tell us.
Kind of getting back to where this all started, right? With just free, open conversations about any topic, right? Just whatever came to mind when we just let it roll. That tends to produce some pretty interesting conversations that we've had in the past and with groups.
Well, I think there's opportunity to have real conversations, which, as a society, we don't have as much, Howard, anymore. We don't have these real conversations.
Yeah.
Maybe we could still entertain some real conversation and maybe just touch the line about being politically correct.
Define a real conversation, right? Because a real conversation 30, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago versus now is different, right? That definition has changed. Real conversation, I know what you mean by real conversation, but I'm thinking, is it a conversation that you get through having your safeguard on the social media and you're doing this back and forth and saying whatever you please and maybe some things you wouldn't normally say? That's not a real conversation, but that's where your true self tends to come out sometimes, or your hidden self. Versus, to me, a real conversation is, let's be able to talk about differences and talk through them, not at each other, but with each other, right? Difference of how you have a conversation. Weren't we supposed to do this one after hours with a bottle of wine each?
That's right. And we talked about that as well. Where is our adult beverages that make us more looser so we can talk about how we really feel about accreditation?
So let's just talk about things in the news. Did you hear about the lawsuit in Detroit that was awarded to the plaintiff, where she was 20 years old, but cerebral palsy. This is a Detroit suburb. And they had called 911. Paramedics came. They had called a doctor. They described what they were seeing and what was going on. They declared her deceased without the doctor actually seeing the patient. Took her away to the morgue, did their thing there, took her to the funeral home. So I don't know if that's like the same day or within a day after that. Funeral home goes to prepare her, unzips the body bag, and she gasps for air.
Oh, wow.
Scary to think about something like that. In any case, I'm sure there's lots of complications behind that as to why that could happen or did happen. But it took this long. Now, she died 2 or 3 months later. Right? She didn't make it after that. But the lawsuit was awarded $3.25 million to the family, right, for all those errors. That's a lot of errors in that whole process for them to not detect what was going on. And I know that can be complex, but holy cow. For her, what an ordeal. Crazy.
A lot of the questions that I would ask if I were, you know, a legal advice for the council, if you will, what measurement instruments were used by these, EMTs?
Yeah.
And does a phone call? I mean, there's got to be more to the story than what is being you and I would have access to.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, they are going to take measurements, right? Heart rate, oxygen levels, things like that. They're going to have common sense, right? That's part of the job is to evaluate, assess the patient. And then, of course, a doctor being online, not there to be able to check things, but just verbally transferring the information back and forth. Wow. Just that's unbelievable that could even happen. But I guess it's probably a very small percentage, minute.
I wonder who is the technical expert on, for recommending the medical side and also the medical equipment. It brings me up to a case I had, a few years, it's got to be 8, 9 years now. I was asked to evaluate a process and where something failed on a major manufacturer,
Hmm.
and it was led right to the calibration department. And I was brought in to evaluate their processes, their accreditation, the whole 9 yards. And my feeling, Howard, already, right, about the legal profession, how I think it's
Yes.
half of them shouldn't be practicing law, where half of them are good and they actually represent the law as it's written and it's supposed to be by our founding fathers, and the other half are just scumbags.
Hmm.
But my point that to this is that the expert that they used has to be knowledgeable for them to win $3.2 million.
Oh, yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, in my case, they ended up, before it went to trial, before they put me on the stand, they offered, to settle out of court, and because they had no case, it was clear they would lose. I'm surprised that this actually went to a jury, but a lot of times you want this kind of case to go to a jury because the jury will reward more.
Correct. The fact that it took 5 years
Yeah.
for that to finish out, that is a lot of grief to go through for the family.
What that does is that boasts my position that we need to make sure we have ethics, that we're 100% training our technicians,
Mhm.
to be ethical, to make sure they're making the measurements. Can't say it enough, and I can't say it enough, how important every single measurement that's made. You might think that measurement's not important, but it affects everyone every single day of their life.
Yeah. So the term complacency comes to mind. And I want to make sure the audience understands that complacency can have differing levels of thought. Number one, complacency, as in, I don't care. I'm just going to do my job and I really don't
Right.
care what happens. That's a little less of complacency and more of an integrity issue to me. Complacency can be just you're just used to the routine that you're going through every day, and you're losing sight of the importance of your job, regardless of the job. Not doesn't have to be calibration alone, right? Any job. And when it becomes that routine, you've got to find ways to reignite it, right? The passion for what you're doing and why it's important, and
Well,
understanding
who's got to find ways? The the
the
the, the
person doing the job,
supervisor.
person doing the job.
Okay.
Right? You
Not.
gotta find a way to put it in perspective and say, maybe at one point this excited me, this job, and now it's just routine. Or maybe it never excited me and I'm just here to get a paycheck. That's not a good thing to have. What you do is important and how you do it is important. And the outcome is critically important to someone, right? Whether it's to your company or to their client or their product or the consumer of their services or products, right? Along the line somewhere, this can have an impact. And so that complacency, you've got to drive it out. Now, can the employer put things into place to help that happen? Sure. But ultimately, it has to come down to the person doing the job.
Well, do you think accreditation actually addresses that at all in their training requirements, or is it buried where it's inherent and supposed to be there, but it's really not written as such?
I don't know that there's anything in 17025 that addresses that.
Yeah. Mm.
I mean, you could
Because if
say
you,
that training should, but I mean, it's very vague, right?
yeah, right. Yeah. That's a good point because, like you said, if you're there for a paycheck, you know, I don't know. I don't have the answer there. You really hope that, it goes back to the basic question that I've had for my entire life. If you're not enjoying your job, whether back when I was a Cal Lab manager
Mhm.
or anything, I've always said, if you're not enjoying your job, for the love of God, go find a different job.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
you you have to enjoy it because trust me, I'm a crabby old man now, and I can say this with experience. Life is short, my friend. Life is so short. You're going to wake up one day and you're going to be old and crabby. And don't wake up one day and being old and crabby like I am. It's that.
Yeah. As you say something like that with life lessons and life being short, five for fighting, 100 years, that song comes to mind, right? I'm
Right.
16 for a moment. I'm 33 for a moment. I'm 67 for a moment, and life is gone, right?
Yeah. That's
Great.
that's true. And what's funny is that, probably someone in the audience that's 30 years old is listening to me and going, that's just a, crabby old fuck. So,
Yeah.
there-
Well, did you look at elderly people that way when you were younger?
no,
Did you
not really.
dismiss them, or did you look for wisdom?
I think I'd probably have to say I dismissed them. I didn't. I don't think I was smart enough to look to them for knowledge.
Yeah.
Especially when I was in my, mid 30s, I was, brand new officer, basically, especially when I got my captain bars, I thought I was all that, I thought I was such an egotistical,
Well, and I'm glad that you confessed that because it's important for this next part of the discussion in my mind. You can have that attitude in life, which some people do, not all. You can also just be going through your life and not really thinking about other opinions. Some people are oblivious to things around them, and that's not good either. But, that happens. You can also have someone give you advice, no matter what age they are, and you can listen and hear what they're saying and understand, right? Listen to understand, and then decide at that point, doesn't apply to me, or hey, that's great advice. Let me see how I can incorporate it in my daily life. There's all different aspects of how you come across learning experiences, which I think those are.
well, I'm going to, this is the real conversation now, real conversation point. Every time we have a real conversation, I'm going to get in front of the camera and go, this is a real conversation point. I think that 95% of the youth, whether they're in our business or not, do not look to their elders as being smart or they should seek advice from them. I think it is such a rare thing that happens.
Wait a
It's
minute.
probably less than 5%.
Was that these kids these days? Are
I
you
didn't want to
sounding
say
like your
that.
father now?
Well, does your children listen to you?
I'd say yes. Our daughter listens to us on some points. She has her fixed opinion on other things, right? When it comes to politics, we are at opposite ends. And then there's some things in rural beliefs that aren't political that we're at opposite ends. And there's a lot of things that we're on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. So granted, kids are a little different story than we're talking about, some of the younger technicians that we are, especially that we're training to become metrologists.
Mhm.
Should they be in their lab looking at that senior technician? And does that senior technician have an implied role that they should automatically be providing guidance and counsel to the younger ones? Maybe that should become part of the management requirements and management responsibilities, if you will.
Well, that's how at least we have built, and I think most organizations do, build in progression, right? Career succession to those more experienced roles. You got to have more discipline, either deeper or wider in across multiple disciplines.
Yeah.
And then you've got to use that knowledge to be able to help others. And there's a difference between helping others and then moving to leading others because leadership skills are not the same as technical training, right? Some people have good leadership skills, some don't, and some will never develop them. Not everyone should be a manager. That's another thing, right? And
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
and I've seen it in nursing. My wife's been in nursing for a lot of years. I've seen that happen there as well, where they just promote people from within because they don't really have other options. But the
Right.
nursing field was short on nurses anyway for most of the time she was in as a nurse. So they just promote from within to management levels, and they had no training and no skill set for managing people, and it showed. Right, they'd favor some employees and ignore others, and it just make bad decisions as a manager that are very fundamental. If you had any training at all, you wouldn't be making those types of mistakes.
Well, you talk about bad decisions. My God, this would be a 40-hour broadcast if I were to start to list all the bad decisions I made over my life.
Mhm.
I'm sure you could say that yours is probably 39 hours versus 40 hours, but isn't that part of growing up is making decisions, good or bad, and then being accountable for those decisions?
Well, but I know people who make bad decisions quite a bit in their life and never learn from them, and that's the
Yeah,
difference.
I agree.
The goal is
That
not to make bad decisions so you can learn. It's you're going to make bad decisions inadvertently, and then take a lesson learned from that.
yeah.
Figure out how to not do that again, or other things that relate to it, and improve.
So this could be one of those lesson learned things that we should pass on to the younger. Don't be afraid to fail.
Sure.
Be afraid not to move on from your failure.
Correct. That is
Yeah.
absolutely good advice.
Yeah. Well, and it goes into that whole thing about ethics, accountability, integrity. Those are, ultimately things that define our profession. If
Mhm.
you don't have those things, then you're not going to be able to make good measurements. And then someone's going to have put a gallon of gas in their car and they're not going to make it home because they got 26 miles to the gallon and it's 27 miles home.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I made it simplistic, but that's where we're at. We could give the old cliche about what is it, the NASA one?
Common
If you're
sense.
well, no, not NASA, where if you're off 1 degree going to the moon, you'd miss the moon by 600 miles and you'd be off into space forever. That's just 1 degree. That's how close they have to be, and that all the things that go into making that measurement, the time. You
What
know,
math counts? What?
yeah, exactly, exactly. How the Earth is rotating.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, this is way beyond my knowledge base of space flight, but
Yeah.
I know it's complicated to be a NASA engineer.
So
So
that was the recent post, by the way, since you're talking about, NASA and the moon and all this stuff, number of degrees and missing by miles. And I recently had responded to a post or forwarded a post on LinkedIn about NIST stating that, the rotation of the earth is not constant, right? There's instability, there's variance there. And there's been enough variance over the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years that if it continues for, much longer, I don't know if they didn't define much longer, but if it continues for a period of time, the world will have to introduce a leap second to account for it,
I read that article.
right? So, and is that once every 4 years, or is that a leap second every time we accumulate enough difference? And then what does that do to all the GPS units that are all over the world embedded in everything that we use? Maybe not so much of an impact there, although it could be off by a certain number of feet or maybe miles. I doubt that it's miles, but it could make a difference. More importantly, God forbid if we ever have to press the nuclear buttons, right? Those are all tied to synchronized clocks and synchronized time. And if they put in a leap second, what does that do to that? Right? Is there any impact at all?
I
Anyway, just
I
food
read,
for
I
thought.
read the article, and I thought that the article, maybe it's not the same article then, because the article I read said they were proposing for like something like 2030 to adjust the Earth rotation by 40 to the 12th place.
Is that right?
That's something again, I remember reading that a while back, and I don't remember, but it was, obviously, to the 12th places in a second. Might even been, microsecond, 40 place to the microsecond,
Yeah.
which for you and I is, nothing. But if you're traveling to Jupiter,
Hmm.
that's huge.
It is.
So that's the difference between, how accurate, and we could have that conversation again about how, but there's everyone else is having that conversation about how accurate something has to be. We're not going to do that. That's not what we're doing here today.
No.
So
Hey, another recent interesting. Now, this is more on the fun side. One winner of the $1.8 billion Powerball lottery in your home state,
yes,
Arkansas, just outside of Little Rock, a little town called Cabot, Cabot,
yeah,
at a little Murphy oil station.
yeah.
And they still don't know who it is. Has it been announced?
Yes. Well, they don't have to. They've got in the state of Arkansas, you have 3 years you can remain anonymous.
Okay.
So my bet is that they're going to remain anonymous.
Plus or minus a leap second.
Well, it could be 3 lead seconds, but
Depends.
it's 3 years. Which the way the law, and I read about this because you think about it, you would need that amount of time because every single person in the world would be on you immediately. At least this way, you've got some time
So
to
yeah, have you ever
adjust.
looked at those checklists of, I don't know who gives this advice? Maybe it's lawyers who are putting this out there. Maybe it's somebody who's actually won and lost all that money. But the lottery curse is that if you don't do that well, you're going to lose that money very fairly quickly. And I think I've heard estimates of people winning big money like that and losing it within 5 years, right?
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. Half of them
But
lose
the
their
list
money.
is number one, get a good attorney, and then they kind of list which type of attorney and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Number two, get a good accountant, right? The CPA, somebody that's not a friend of the family, and just start doing your planning, and then number of people after that you want to add to the list, and planning all that before you ever tell a soul. No one in the family, right? Don't tell anyone until you get all that stuff in place, because they're saying you can't believe how people come out of the woodwork
yeah.
asking for money.
I can't tell you. I mean, we must have had that morning, because it happened on Christmas, right?
Yes.
We must have had 50 phone calls from people asking if we won.
I think I texted you. I didn't call you
You,
on
you,
that one.
you were one of them
I
that
said,
said, "Did
"Hey,
you guys win?"
congratulations."
Yeah. Did you guys win? So, I'm just to myself going, "Oh my God."
Oh, no, no, hold on. Now, don't take that as me begging for money. I wasn't. That's your money. If you win it, I'd be happy to just know somebody who won. That
Yeah,
was me saying, "Let me test you to see if you even listened to that list. Are you going to respond with yes, I won?" Then you just blew it.
yeah. No,
So I was helping you,
no, I guarantee. Had I won, I would have responded, "Nope, it wasn't me."
and that's the answer I expect if you're listening to that list.
Yes, exactly.
Had
Nope.
I won, right? Just throwing it off that I didn't win, but you actually did. So I still think you actually won. I think you're following the right steps, and you actually won.
Yeah, trust me. If I had won, you would have my replacement for the
There'll be
podcast.
signs.
I'd be, I'd be on the phone with our buddy Mitch. Mitch, we need a fill in. Come on and do the podcast with Howard. I'm not feeling good.
Yeah, Mitch, and we'll have to send Mitch through surgery. You'll have enough money where you can do a face off with him, and so he can
Yeah,
look like you on the podcast,
right,
change the
exactly.
voice and all that.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting that how many people and I've heard stories where they spend way more than they should on these lottery tickets. I buy 5 tickets, which is $10. Trust me, I can afford $10 a week on lottery.
Yeah,
That's what I do on Friday afternoon. I go to the gas
yeah,
station. I get
yeah.
five
I,
tickets.
I don't bother when it's like 20, 30 million. I mean, why would you bother with that kind of level?
Yeah, what's with 10 million? Who wants 10 million?
I'm kidding. I used to play fairly, not weekly, but I used to play fairly regularly. I don't know, 5, 10 years ago. Lately, I buy it occasionally. I just because honestly, in the past, I've had a pile of lottery tickets sitting on my desk, and all the traveling that I'd done in the past, never bothered to check them. It got to the point where they're only good for 6 months, right? 180 days.
Yeah.
And I've had tickets that I couldn't even verify. I couldn't go back and find the numbers. And probably those are the ones that won, or one of those won. And I should have been a billionaire by now, or a millionaire at least. And I blew it because I didn't even check the ticket that I paid the money for.
Well, my problem was many years ago when I lived in California. I won twice on the lottery. One time I won 10 grand with two other people. We, pooled our money into back when they just had the Powerball. I don't think they even had Mega at the time. I know they had
Mm,
Powerball. I don't remember. Anyways, we won 10 grand.
mm,
And so we split that three ways. And after taxes, it was less than $2,000 that we won.
right,
So, I'm sure that over the last 10 years, I've given my winnings back tenfold.
right, right. So the 1.8 billion, I think what they showed the estimate of the payout after, if you took the money up front, which they recommend you do because you can beat the interest rate of 20 years that they pay, and you pay the taxes on that, I think that person ends up with like 620 million. Still a lot of money, right? Not 1.8 billion, but what are you going to do with that? Where's it? You don't go to a bank and put that in there. And that's the other thing that they tell you to set up trusts and all these other things. That's why you want all this staff of investor advisors and CPAs and lawyers and all that, so that you can set all these things up ahead of time before you ever announce to the world that you won.
You know what I'd be afraid of? I'd be afraid of kidnappers.
That I don't know how often that happens, but I'm sure that's a real possibility.
Yeah, because there's always, we talked about this many times in our podcast episodes. The scumbag out there, you know, there literally are more bad people today than there was 100 years ago, and it's so much easier now to commit, heinous crimes and get away with it. It's really
Some would argue that it was easier then because there was not cameras everywhere and digital monitoring and all this other stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's nasty smart people now.
Oh, there's some wickedly smart people out there.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm not sure, so give me like, 10 million and I'll be happy. That way I don't have to deal with the huge headache of winning 641 million.
Now hold on. I just saw an advisor here or investor advisor here recently give a number. The perfect number for perfect retirement without ever having to earn another penny because the money will do it for you. You want to guess how much?
20 million.
I would have thought it would have been to your 10 million, right? 3.2275 million.
Oh, really?
It's all you need because they go through this whole thing of, then you don't have to pay taxes on the first 98,900 because then you have your standard deduction. You could take 131,000 total between those two every year without ever paying taxes. And if you do the 4% rule on 131,000, it comes out to 3.23 million effectively.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Now, can you survive currently? I'm not going to ask you your details of your financial cost, but I'm sure you take home more than 130,000 a year. And if you do, this is not enough. If you don't, then it is. Now, here's the other thing. In retirement, you shouldn't have a mortgage payment. That's really what this is based off of.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have a mortgage payment. Maybe you have a car payment, a reasonable one. You're not going out and buying, top of the line Corvette fully, or Tesla or whatever is your fancy. But that should be enough to take care of your daily costs of living.
Well, when I planned my retirement, now we're going down another avenue. I plan now my house is paid for. All my vehicles are paid for.
That's a great position to be in.
I literally do not owe anybody except the credit card I use to buy food, gas, McDonald's. That's my only bill I have. Besides, and we have all the other stuff being paid automatically, like the tax payment. The only bills that we incur are the gardener, things like that. So there's a fixed cost that I applied to maintain the property.
Sure.
Yeah, so I have that. And then I have 5% a year on top of that is that's the goal that goes up. And anyways, long story short, I did a lot of planning before I retired back when I was 62.
And because of that thorough planning, I'm still convinced you won the lottery.
Trust me, if I won the lottery, I would not be here right now. I would have gotten on that plane and went to Hawaii, and you would not be hearing from me. I'd be on the top floor of that favorite hotel of mine. I would have bought the top floor completely, and that's what I would have done. You talk about a dream. If I would have won the 1.8 billion, I would have went to my favorite resort. I would have bought the top 2 suites on the hotel I love. I'd have one for guests, and I'd live in the other one.
Talking about Maui?
Yeah, Maui.
Yeah.
Those 2 top floors.
It's beautiful.
That's what I would have done. But anyways, so believe it or not, we've been talking for going on 38 minutes now, and we haven't even begun to talk about proficiency testing or anything we're supposed to talk about yet.
No, but it's been fun just bouncing things around.
Well, we probably, before we bounce things around, we probably should talk about this is the mid-season episode, if you will.
Hmm.
We've had an interesting start to it, and we've got some great guests coming up for the wrap us up. But the biggest announcement that I think I want our listeners to talk about and to realize is it is NAPT's 30th year in business.
Number 30 this
30
year.
years.
That is a nice milestone.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, we talked earlier in the episode about how time just flies.
Yeah.
And it literally, they say it seems like only yesterday, but I'm telling you, it seems like only yesterday I was in that hotel room with, a couple guys where we talked about, should there be an organization that is independent and provides proficiency testing services to the metrology community.
Yeah.
And honest to God, if you would have told me 30 years ago that I'd be sitting where I am 30 years later with the largest provider for metrology-based interlaboratory comparisons,
Right.
I'd have told you you're crazy.
So when a new opportunity comes up like that and there's no player in the field, that's where you were at the time, right?
Yeah, after there's zero.
Right.
Everyone told me I was crazy.
There's how many people were talking about the need for that? And there are people that seriously considered it, but then chose that wasn't the path for them.
I know, you tell me. That's a good question.
How many competitors did you have, serious competitors, when you were starting up NAPT?
Zero.
Okay. So somebody had to consider it seriously, besides you.
You would think so, right?
Yeah. Because I'm always the guy that's like, hey, what if I invented this? And then I'll see 3 or other advertisements for people that have already invented it and put it out on the market. It's like,
Well, you know what kind of happened, Howard, is that when I was trying to decide whether or not the community at large needed it, I went to a bunch of other organizations and said, can you expand your operation? And there was it's still around today, organization that was very closely related that provided proficiency testing services to, the metrological community, if you will.
mhm,
And I talked to them about it, and they didn't want to do it. They did not want to expand into calibration artifacts simply because, they at the time they didn't have an expert that could do it. And that's what it takes, obviously, an expert to in any proficiency testing. If you don't have experts, you're not going to be able to provide that level of service. Anyways, long story short, it's not like it was, a number of conversations. I went to NCSLI, I went to ASQ, I went to ANSI. I mean, I went to all of them, and they all said the same answer. No, it's, we're not going to do it. Let the government do it. Let the government do it.
mhm.
And nobody did it. So,
Well, you did it and you did it well.
well, I,
Congratulations.
again, I didn't do it myself. It's got to be said for the record that there are a lot of organizations that helped out NEPT over the years.
Mhm.
Which is, as a sidebar, I went back and I looked, and there are 3 organizations, believe it or not, that are still with us that were constant members over the last every year they've been doing
Never stopped.
proficiency.
Yeah.
Never stop. 3, just 3,
You want to
and we
name
do.
them?
We will once I get their permission.
Okay. Didn't know you hadn't had that. Okay.
No,
Yeah,
no,
that'd be great. I think that should be something that they get attaboy for.
yeah. And but because the first 3 was, we did the first one was the torque
Mhm.
kit. Second one was the DMM, the 4.5-digit DMM. The third one was the gauge block kit.
Oh
Those
yeah.
were the first 3 that we did. And, that was 3. Now we've got 156 kits.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. And we got how many competitors now? We've got 4 other people that are trying it,
At,
and they just
at, le-
mimic what
at
NAPT
least
does.
3. At least 3, maybe 4.
I think there's yeah, there's 1, 2, yeah, there's 4.
Okay.
4 that try and provide the calibration services that we do. And there's some specialty companies out there, but you know, it holds true. My old cliche when we close this show, we talk about how important proficiency testing is, and it's the only way you can show your competence. But that's a fact. I mean, I use it as a tagline, but without question, you know, accreditation, was definitely tied to how we got started. NAPT supports accreditation. So that's why I get told all the time, Chuck, you cannot badmouth accreditation because,
Oh, you can make it toe the line though, right?
right. And
Because
that,
the lifeblood of accreditation is through the accrediting bodies, and they have to make sure that it keeps its validity, it keeps its value.
well, I think that people have it wrong is they think that I'm bad mouthing accreditation. The problem is that I value labs that are accredited so much that
Hmm.
I do not want to lose that value that the community over the last 25 years has worked so hard to get in place.
Right.
And if we lose that, we lose the credibility that accreditation brings to the metrology community. We've just wasted 25 years. We don't need another standard in 5 years from now saying, well, 25 is done. Let's have a new standard or let's have a new
Hmm.
agreement. You know,
Right.
and the only way we do that is we become complacent and we live on our, what we had in the past. We can't do that. We got to continually grow always. So
Driving out that complacency that we talked about
yeah.
earlier.
So to our 30th anniversary, we are going to have a party and we're inviting all our members to come to the party, whether you go to NCSLI in Kansas, right? Or is it Kansas, Missouri?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Missouri, downtown
Hmm.
for the NCSLI exposit conference and workshop, whatever they call it.
Workshop and
We're,
symposium. So yes, this is the first year ever that the NCSLI conference has been will be in Kansas City, Missouri. This is great. It's my hometown, so I'm not traveling anywhere so for me it's wonderful. But for NAPT's 30th anniversary, there's great food choices here. Many different food choices. Of course, number one for Kansas City is barbecue. And so I would hope that we can have a party with some barbecue. That'd be great.
well, it's either that or we got to find a good sports bar that has good barbecue too. Because we did the 20th anniversary at a sports bar, and it turned out really well. And we had like 100 people there, and I'm expecting 100 again. So
Mhm.
that should be the number that we go for. But you're invited. You don't have to go to NCSLI. If you want to come in for the golf on Saturday and the party on Sunday, come on in just for the party. But as long as you're there, maybe attend NCSLI while you're there. It's a
Yep.
lots to learn from it.
So, by the way, speaking of golf, and you had asked me this question before. So every year I have that golf outing,
Yeah.
and this one dovetails right into NCSL. So it's that weekend where NCSL starts.
So it's the Saturday
It's that
before.
Saturday. Yes.
Oh, so
Yeah.
we're not going to.
The actual charity event is on Saturday. And of course, my guys usually come in on Wednesday or Thursday, usually Thursday, and we'll golf maybe Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, and then Saturday at the charity event. And then Sunday, they usually disperse to go home. But of course, we'll be here to go start the conference.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
Sunday is when we're going to have the celebration, correct, for NAPT.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct. Well, I'm glad it doesn't interfere with your charity event, and it's a great
Yeah.
charity that you're involved with.
And by the way, we've had a band in the past on Saturday night after the tournament, I call it a tournament, after the charity golf event. We usually have a live band here at the house. This year, it's going to be my band, Mixtape.
Oh,
Right?
nice.
We're gonna play for the event, so that'll be good. Now I've still got to try to find a good way to cater something in here for the dinner, because I'm not going to try to cook and be in the band as well. That's
No,
going to be a
God,
little
no.
too much. Normally we had a Berea, a food truck that would come in and pull up in the backyard. She went out of business last year, so
Oh
it's a
no,
shame because some of the best food I've ever had. It was so good.
it
So
was a
I'll
great
find
food
something.
truck. So
Maybe we can resurrect her for this event. We'll see. But yeah, it's
yeah.
going to be a great week and a half.
Well, that's great. So that's the settling of the NAP part of the portion.
Yeah.
We can move on to our upcoming guests. Our next episode that we're going to record, the tables are going to be flipped. We're going to get asked a bunch of questions by
Our
a
guest.
a guest that we had last year.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to that, but I'm
You
also
sound nervous.
well, what I gave up being a bullshitter 25 years ago. That's a nice way of saying I gave up lying when I quit doing sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Ouch.
I know.
I thought liar and lawyer were tied together.
Well,
Sales? Wait a minute.
it's, how do you know a politician is lying?
Mouth is moving.
They're talking.
Yeah.
I got a million of them. I could be here all day.
Oh,
I could do
nice.
this all day long and rip politicians and rip lawyers and just, lose a couple more friends by keeping on this topic.
Yeah.
But so then we got a couple more C-suite supervisors, if you will, that we're going to have to close out the season, and then we're off for the summer, and we're going to enjoy the summer. So we're entering the quote unquote, what do you want to call it, the conference season now, where we get busy with conferences and we get busy with vacations and we get busy with new plans, new years.
Hmm.
All those things are take up our time. But you know what, Howard? Doesn't it seem? It seems to me now that I'm old and gray. It's always something that comes up that says, "Well, we got to plan for this. We got to plan for that. We got to plan for this." There's never no downtime anymore.
That's life, isn't it? And I've even
You-
heard that for people who are fully retired, not partially retired like you, but fully retired, where their life now just fills with other things and there's never a free moment. How does that happen? It's kind of like when I was working sometimes two jobs, mainly one job, sometimes two, and going to school with my wife pretty much raising our daughter because I was so busy, right? She took care of the household and even she worked. So it was just a busy time. And then when I was finished with my master's degree, and we settled into a life of our own, and I started traveling a lot with, Transcat. I wondered how I ever fit all those things in.
I know.
I looked back and thought I couldn't do that again. I don't know how I did it. And then I look back and think of all the travel I've done with Transcat and our personal life as well. How do I fit all that in? We just juggle it. We figure out a way.
Yeah. It makes an interesting point because 20 years, well, 40 years ago when I was in the Army, you were up from 5 a.m. until midnight.
Hmm.
So we did everything, and your day encompassed a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Now I go to bed at 10 p.m. is when I turn the lights off,
Right.
and I get up at 6 a.m., which is I've got 3 less hours a day that I do stuff with. And
Yeah.
trust me, yeah, there's days where I don't get out of bed until 7. Trust me, there's days I don't want to get out of bed at all.
So that's okay. But, 3 to 4 hours a day adds up over a year or multiple years of things you could have gotten done. So
Yeah,
that's probably how we fit it in.
yeah.
Never slept.
I remember my life in the military, and I remember it fondly and sometimes not so fondly. But I'll tell you, I was never better physically and better mentally than when I was in the service.
Hmm.
It just made me be, active and thinking, and I learned so much when I was in the service. Not just metrology related, but after I went to OCS and put the bars on for a while, it was really unbelievable education. I'm going to go to my grave saying I think every single child should go to basic training. You pick whatever branch you want and pick an MOS. That every single child should go do that as part of their transition from high school to college. Because right
Just the
now,
discipline alone, you mean?
oh yeah,
Mm.
kids. I mean, I know this firsthand. Kids coming out of high school are not ready, not only for the world, they're not ready to go to college. Look at the classes that colleges are offering.
I know.
Algebra 1. My
Mm.
God, you kidding me? You're
Yeah.
going to
That should have been
college to go.
long ago in early under high school years.
And these are Big Ten schools that are offering these elementary classes. Why do they have to offer them? Because they didn't learn it in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to make up for it somehow. That to me is lowering the bar, right?
That's
From,
what we've done.
from
We've
colleges and
lowered the bar.
universities in the US to those around the world. Not all
Well,
of
we
them
took,
do that, but that's why you also have Ivy League schools that are 90,000 a year or whatever they cost today.
yeah, yeah.
They don't do
Well,
that.
we talked about being politically correct. I don't care. I'm not. I'm going to be politically correct because it's an ongoing subject. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of good teachers out there, and yeah, their hands are probably tied. But my God, the system is broke, and it's getting broker every day. And
Broker.
broker,
Broker.
broker. I need to go back to school.
Okay. No, I'm not making it out. Just I couldn't help myself from laughing. It's not about that. I was thinking of something else.
Don't don't ever have brain surgery. It's not good. I mean, trust me. You lose a step or two when you have a couple of brain surgeries,
Yeah, I'm
especially
sure.
when you get old and fat. So
I've never had that, so I can't say, but I'm sure.
yeah.
Hey,
So
I wanted to mention something that happened the other day, just on a personal note. I was watching a movie that I'd never seen before, and the movie is called, and I think it was on AMC or FMC, um, "The Horror of It All." The Horror of It All. Want to make sure you don't confuse that second word, HORROR.
yeah,
This is a rated probably G movie at the time, or PG at the worst. In any case, this was a Pat Boone movie. So Pat Boone was a singer, right? But apparently he had a movie at least, if not more. I didn't know that, right? And I like old movies. I think they're fun to watch. This is an old black and white, I believe. It felt like a black and white. Anyway, um, and it's kind of a horror comedy, right? Slapstick. It's just silly. It's a silly movie. It's fun to watch. My wife hated it, but in any case, in the movie, he apparently wants to get engaged to this woman. And so he surprises her at her family estate. But on the way on the way driving there, it's a stormy night and whatever else happens, and the car ends up running out of gas or breaking down. And so he's trying to push it along, but it's a heavy car because they made heavy cars back then, right? And he accidentally starts pushing it down like to the edge of this hill, and it ends up rolling down the hill and going into the embankment, rolling over and getting destroyed. And then he walks the rest of the way to this estate. And in any case, at the estate, he starts meeting these family members, and they're all bizarre, right? They're just, it's almost like, have you ever seen the movie Knives Out?
yeah.
It's almost kind of like that, almost like a Adam's Family type of thing. Anyway, all the family members have got their quirks, like strange, very strong quirks. So this guy, Grandpa, um, he is an inventor. So he's got this little room that's a laboratory, and he's showing him all these inventions, and he has this great big glass bulb there, and he's got all these wires going to it and everything. And he lights it up, and the filament lights up, and he goes, "I call it electricity." Right. So he thinks he's invented electricity, but this is clearly in his mind, it's a new invention, but it's already been out there. And the guy was driving a car, for God's sake. Right. So it's just kind of slapstick like that. Well, at the end of it, he's showing him this phonograph that he invented, right, with the big horn coming out of it. And so he says, "You know what this needs? A little more bass." And then Pat Boone says, "Yeah, it sounds a little tinny." All right. So anyway, I thought that was awesome, right? So my mind immediately went to Megan Trainor. It's all about that bass, right? So I thought, oh, that'd be a cute clip to throw together, do a mashup, and throw it up on Instagram or something like that. So I went on I actually recorded that on my phone, and then I went to the internet and I found a website that had the clip from "It's All About That Bass," little video clip, and saw what it took to download it. I could either pay a fee or I could watch a couple of advertisements, and then here you should get to download one clip, and after that you have to pay for everything else. So I download the clip, I follow their requirements, I mash it up, I put it out on Instagram, and it immediately comes back and says, "Copyright infringement, your video is blocked." Right. And so, of course, it automatically posts to Facebook, and it did the same thing there. And so I click on the thing to see what this is all about. It's like I followed what I was supposed to. What's the problem? It tells me 30 seconds, which was this clip that I downloaded for Megan Trainor. 30 seconds of your video is copyrighted by Sony Entertainment Systems, and you are not allowed to publish it. So it gives you three options. I think it says, okay, fine, don't post it. Or number two, I legally own this, dispute it. Or number three, dispute for other reasons. So I disputed for another reason. And I said, look, I'm just posting it as a funny clip. I'm not making any money off of it. In fact, consider it free marketing because if anything, you're going to make money off of this if it makes any money, and I will make nothing. Right. So I disputed it. Now they have 7 days to go through and answer that dispute. So now it's going to make them do whatever they got to do next. So I kicked it back to them. It irritated me a little bit, but here's really where I'm going with this. Was that an AI function that found that in 30 seconds? Or does that clip that I downloaded have a code embedded in it that reports back home?
I don't
Right.
know. Maybe.
But amazing that it would be that much. Now, that got me thinking, if I wanted to really work around that, could I have just had it on my computer and did a recording of that on my phone and put together, and then it would take them longer to find that? I'm not trying to beat the system here, right? I'm just curious about how all that worked because it was so quick. I'm thinking it had to be a code that sent it back because for AI to search everything all the time around the world would take
Yeah,
forever, right?
yeah. No, I think you're probably right. It's probably a code. I mean, we could ask the IT department. Don't you have an IT department that would know that?
Yeah, I'm not going to waste their time with that. They got so much on their plate. Just an interesting situation there.
It
So,
sounds like the movie is a mixture of the Munsters and Rocky Horror Picture Show.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's a cute movie. You should watch it.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, Pat Boone sings a couple songs in there. The theme song, the horror of it all, he sings that, and then that's when it goes into that. He's in the laboratory with Grandpa, and you know that
Yeah,
was
Pat Boone, I think, would be color though. Pat Boone, around the time that he'd be in television, was color.
yeah. Here's my memory fading on me because I just watched it a few days ago.
You're becoming like
It
me.
felt black and white to me. I think they did it intentionally black and white.
Yeah, yeah. I like it when films do that.
It was made in '64. Did I say that?
64 would be color.
Yeah, but they did make black and whites intentionally.
Well, this is our mid-season, so we got the first. We didn't talk too much about our first 6 episodes, so we probably should make sure that people that haven't listened to it yet is to go listen to all 6 episodes
Hmm.
and like every single one and follow NAPT, like our program, follow us, have every one of your employees listen to it because we give great advice for technicians to become loyal drones, to do those calibrations, to perform ethically, all those
Yeah.
good things.
Well, even though that we've been told we have a face for radio, I would still suggest that you watch the content on YouTube to see these beautiful mugs right in front of you. Let's talk
There's
about the
no
mugs
doubt.
on your shelf there. You thinking of it's talking about us?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. And let me close the door so I can just get more, so I can show all the mugs I have. So, by the way, I'm giving away all my stuff. I decided to.
Your billions?
No, the stuff on my shelf. I had to redo my trust, right?
Yeah.
And so
You took me out of your trust? Oh my
never word
gosh.
it. But in the trust, so I had to add all the stuff that I've acquired since the last trust was 10 years old.
I thought you said when you trust me that I was being put in your trust. Sorry, my
Yeah,
mistake.
I know. So I'm splitting all my weapons. I've got a ton of weapons,
Okay.
and so I'm giving half to one son and half to the other son, and trying to decide who would want the other one.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to decide which do I want to give to my two boys because they're the ones that's basically getting everything, and all this kind of stuff. So it's interesting that all the stuff on the back I'm going through, and I have some valuable stuff that I think is valuable. You know, like my trophy up there from when I was individual match play champion for my golf course, and back when I was club champion, I was going, who's going to want that stuff after you're
Hmm.
gone? You know, do you want me to want me to put that in my trust for you, and you can put it on your shelf, which is missing. So behind you,
Yeah. Painters are coming in here tomorrow. So this color next time you see it will be different.
what color are you going to?
Oh, let that be a surprise. What
Okay,
color do you think this office should be?
hunter green.
Hunter green. Well, it's not that, but that wouldn't be a bad choice.
Yeah,
It's
they
mustard
say
yellow
hunter
right now, so it's going to go to a chocolate color.
chocolate. Well, I
Chocolate,
like
chocolate.
chocolate.
It'll make you think of chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk or chocolate bars. If I could give up chocolate, I could finally probably lose that 10 pounds that my doctor wants me to lose.
Chocolate is delicious.
Yeah, that's my only bad advice. So with that being said, look forward to the next 5, 6 episodes we have for season 2. If you have any questions that you want us to address, talk about topics you want us to address, drop me or Howard an email. You've got our email addresses. I'm just ellis@proficiency.org. Howard has a Proficiency account as well as his other business account, either one, but you can reach him at howard@proficiency.org. He does answer those emails as well. So let us know what you want us to talk about. And if there's any guests out there that you want us to bring on, we'll be love to get your input on that. So Any last words there, Howard?
Yeah, thanks for not kicking me off the show. I mean, season and a half, and I'm still here. Consider myself lucky.
Yeah, and we got a lot more to go. I'm excited about the guests coming up, and as we talked about, I'm a little bit nervous about the question and answer that's going to be posed to us. The only thing I can say is if I get asked a question, I have to answer it, and I can't be politically correct because I was asked the question.
Well, you do what you got to do as the guest, right?
Exactly.
And I'm
Exactly.
sure that this individual thinks that we're avoiding him because we've had to reschedule at least once, if not twice.
Twice so far, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like,
So
they're too nervous about the questions I'm going to ask.
yeah,
He's
exactly.
bringing the heat.
Yeah, it'll be. I guarantee that'll be an interesting episode because Troy is a great conversationalist.
Yeah, he is.
So he'll probably ask those questions that I've had with him in person, which would be very embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm so canned. The only way to prove your technical competency is by participating in proficiency testing. So if you're not doing proficiency testing, you're not proving your technical competence. So go sign up for a test with us today, hopefully. If not, do one internally, but you need to do proficiency testing. It's the only way. So with that, take care. We'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you. How easy,